There was a time when the news shocked you. You remember it. You felt it in your chest. You talked about it with people. You carried it with you through the day. Now you scroll. Another crisis. Another war. Another economic collapse. Another political scandal. Another environmental disaster. Another tragedy. And instead of panic, you feel distance. Not calm, not stable, just muted. And that muting unsettles you, because you don't want to be indifferent. You don't want to become someone who doesn't care. You don't want suffering to feel normal. But here's the uncomfortable truth. You didn't stop caring. You adapted. Your nervous system was never designed for global awareness at scale. For most of human history, your emotional world was small, local. You reacted to what you could see, what you could influence, what directly affected your tribe. If there was danger, it was physical. If there was loss, it was communal. If there was conflict, it had faces. Now your brain absorbs conflict from continents away, economic shifts in markets you don't participate in, political tension in systems you don't control, violence in places you've never been, all before breakfast. Your nervous system does not register geography, it registers stimulation. And stimulation at this scale overwhelms emotional processing capacity. At first, the response was anxiety. You felt alert, hyper-aware, constantly checking, refreshing feeds, trying to stay informed. But anxiety is metabolically expensive. You cannot live in fight or flight forever. If threat feels constant and unresolved, the brain recalibrates. When something is chronic and uncontrollable, emotional intensity gets reduced. That reduction feels like numbness, but numbness is not apathy. It is conservation. If your nervous system didn't lower the volume, you would collapse under the weight of constant activation. So it dims the lights. Not because you don't care, because caring at that scale is unsustainable. There's another layer most people don't see. The information ecosystem is engineered for emotional spikes. Outrage spreads faster than nuance. Fear spreads faster than context. Conflict spreads faster than resolution. Your feed is not neutral. It is optimized for engagement. And engagement is driven by emotional intensity. So your baseline shifts. When every scroll contains urgency, urgency becomes background noise. The first time you saw a certain headline, it stopped you. The 50th time, it registered. The 100th time, it blurred. This is desensitization, not because you lack empathy, because repetition dulls response. The brain adapts to repeated stimuli by reducing emotional charge. It's the same mechanism that allows emergency responders to function in crisis. Repeated exposure reduces shock, but here's the difference. Emergency responders have agency. They act, they intervene, they witness cause and effect. You are often exposed without agency. You consume suffering without the ability to resolve it. Helpless exposure leads to emotional withdrawal. This is where learned helplessness begins to creep in. When problems feel vast, constant, and beyond your influence, your brain quietly calculates, what difference does my emotional investment make? And when the answer feels like none, distance becomes protective. But numbness doesn't stay contained to headlines. It spreads. Conversations feel repetitive. Political debates feel pointless. Social outrage feels performative. Hope feels naive. Cynicism becomes safer than optimism. Because optimism requires emotional risk, and you're tired. You might even notice moral tension inside yourself, a small voice asking, "Shouldn't I care more? Why don't I react the way I used to? Am I becoming desensitized?" That guilt adds another layer of exhaustion. Shame accelerates shutdown, because feeling bad about not feeling enough drains even more emotional energy. So the system distances further. This isn't moral decline. It's overload layered with self-judgment. There's also a social consequence to widespread numbness. When large groups become emotionally fatigued, engagement shifts, attention spans shorten, nuance decreases, discussions polarize faster. Why? Because complexity requires emotional bandwidth, and bandwidth is limited. When people are saturated, they default to simplified narratives. Us versus them, right versus wrong, outrage versus silence. That creates cycles of intensity followed by retreat, burst reaction, emotional fatigue, withdrawal, then repeat. The world begins to feel unstable and repetitive at the same time, and repetition without resolution breeds detachment. You say, "It's always something," and that phrase is revealing, because when crisis feels constant, crisis loses definition, urgency dissolves, and when urgency dissolves, motivation fades. But here's the critical distinction. You are not indifferent. You are saturated. Saturation requires boundaries. You were not built to emotionally process the suffering of billions of people simultaneously. You were built for relational scale, community scale, human scale. The internet erased scale. Your biology didn't evolve to keep up, so your nervous system adjusted. The goal now is not to force yourself to feel everything again. That would overwhelm you. The goal is intentional engagement. Choose fewer inputs. Choose deeper understanding. Choose proximity over abstraction, because meaning requires feedback. When you act locally, when you help someone directly, when you participate tangibly, when you contribute in ways you can see, emotion reconnects safely. Agency restores emotional circuitry. When you see cause and effect, your nervous system re-engages without panic. You don't need to care about everything. You need to care about something, deliberately. Boundaries are not indifference. They are sustainability. Limit repetition. Reduce outrage loops. Avoid constant refreshing. Consume less, but with intention. Because when everything demands emotion, nothing feels real. And when nothing feels real, motivation fades. There's something even deeper happening. When numbness becomes normal, it doesn't just affect how you consume information. It affects how you see yourself. You begin to believe you're detached, less emotional, more hardened, more realistic. You might even wear it like armor. I just don't get emotional about things anymore. But that detachment wasn't a personality decision. It was a coping strategy. And when coping strategies become identity, they reshape behavior. You stop initiating difficult conversations. You disengage from topics that once mattered to you. You avoid investing emotionally in change, not because you don't believe in change, because your nervous system associates engagement with exhaustion. There's also a structural incentive to keep you this way. Attention is currency. The more emotionally activated you are, the longer you stay online. Outrage keeps you scrolling. Fear keeps you refreshing. Conflict keeps you reacting. But after prolonged exposure, something shifts. You don't become more engaged. You become fatigued. And fatigued users don't think deeply. They skim, they react, they disengage, which ironically keeps the cycle running, because quick reactions generate more content, and more content generates more saturation. It's not personal. It's systemic. Your numbness isn't random. It's predictable. But here's the cost of staying numb too long. When emotional distance becomes habitual, you begin distancing from things that matter in your real life too. You hesitate to care deeply. You hesitate to hope. You hesitate to commit emotionally to causes, people, or change, because somewhere internally you've associated caring with depletion, and that is the real danger. Not that you stop reacting to headlines, but that you stop feeling possibility, that you stop believing engagement matters, that you shrink your emotional range. You weren't built to feel everything, but you were built to feel something fully. The goal isn't resensitization to chaos. It's selective reconnection, reclaiming your attention, reclaiming your emotional bandwidth, reclaiming the right to choose what deserves your care. Because when you choose deliberately, emotion stops feeling overwhelming. It starts feeling grounded. You are not broken. You are overloaded, and overload produces distance. The shift isn't to care louder, it's to care closer. Not global scale, human scale. Maybe the numbness you're worried about isn't moral failure. It's your nervous system asking for limits. Maybe you don't need more awareness. Maybe you need healthier exposure. Maybe the real strength isn't staying emotionally activated 24/7. Maybe it's knowing what deserves your emotional energy. Maybe it's time to shift the story.